Welcome back to Amerixa Daily, where we break down the world's biggest stories in a way that actually makes sense. And today, we're diving into something that sounds like a contradiction at the highest level of global power. I want you to think about this for a moment. The United States launches a massive military-backed operation to protect one of the most critical shipping routes on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz. This isn't just any waterway. Roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through this narrow stretch. That's about 1 in every 5 barrels of oil on the planet. Now imagine this: dozens of commercial ships stranded. Global trade at risk. Oil prices threatening to spike. Entire economies watching nervously. So what does the world's most powerful military do? It launches a mission, fast, decisive, heavily backed by naval and air forces, to escort ships safely through. A humanitarian corridor, they call it. A show of strength. A promise of stability, and then, almost immediately, it pauses. Not because it failed. Not because the danger disappeared. In fact, the blockade remains. The tension remains. The threat remains. But the operation designed to solve the problem? Paused. Think about that for a moment. A global superpower creates a high-stakes solution, only to stop it right when it becomes most relevant. So here's the paradox. Why would you build a system to ensure freedom of movement, and then freeze that freedom mid-action? Is it caution? Strategy? Or something much deeper that isn't obvious at first glance? Because when you zoom out, this doesn't look like confusion. It looks intentional, the obvious answer and why it's wrong. Now, the obvious answer most people jump to is simple. Well, negotiations are happening. So they pause to avoid escalation. And on the surface, that makes sense. If you're close to a deal, you don't want to provoke the other side. You reduce activity, lower tensions, and create space for diplomacy. It's like two people arguing. If they're finally talking things out, they don't keep shouting at the same time. Seems logical, right? But here's where it starts to fall apart. Because while the operation was paused, the blockade stayed fully active. Pressure didn't decrease. Military presence didn't disappear. In fact, the message was almost contradictory. We're pausing movement, but not power. So the real question becomes: if the goal was peace, why keep the pressure at maximum? Let's use a simple analogy. Imagine a bank lends you money, but at the same time, freezes your ability to use that money freely. You technically have access, but not really. At a small scale, that wouldn't make sense. The system would break. But at a global scale? That's exactly what's happening. And this is where the obvious explanation stops working. Because this isn't just about protecting ships. It's about controlling the conditions under which movement happens. Layer by layer reveal. Layer 1, power that controls itself. Let's start with the first layer. At the highest level, governments don't just act. They signal. Every military move, every pause, every announcement sends a message. Think of it like this. The same authority that creates pressure also controls when that pressure is visible. Left pocket, right pocket. The United States launches an operation showing strength: we can secure global trade. Then pauses it, but we don't have to. Here's where it gets fascinating. By pausing the operation while maintaining the blockade, the system creates a controlled imbalance. Movement is restricted, but the ability to allow movement still exists. That creates leverage. Because now, the question isn't, can ships move? The question becomes, under what conditions will we allow them to move? That's power. Layer 2, the world as both player and audience. Now let's go one level deeper. This isn't just about one country and one decision. It's about multiple players, countries, markets, and global systems, all reacting at the same time. Think about global trade. Oil flows affect everything, from gas prices to food costs to manufacturing. When something disrupts that flow, the entire world feels it. So when an operation like this is launched, markets react. When it's paused, markets react again. Countries start making decisions. Alliances shift. Pressure builds, not just on one nation, but across the entire system. Here's the twist. The same global system that depends on stability also reacts to instability. In other words, the world is both the participant and the observer. And that reaction? That's part of the strategy. Because influence isn't just about action. It's about how others respond to that action. Layer 3, the human story. Now let's bring this down to a human level. Imagine a truck driver named Daniel. He doesn't follow geopolitics closely. He's just trying to do his job, transport goods, earn a living, support his family. But suddenly, fuel prices spike. Shipping slows down. Deliveries get delayed. Costs rise. Daniel doesn't see military operations or diplomatic negotiations. He just sees the result. Higher expenses. Lower margins. More uncertainty. Now imagine a small business owner, Sarah. She imports goods that depend on stable shipping routes. When the Strait of Hormuz becomes unstable, her costs increase. Her timelines stretch. Her risks multiply. She has no control over global strategy. But her entire business depends on it. Here's the paradox at the human level. People who have no role in these decisions are deeply affected by both sides of them. The action and the pause. The pressure and the release. Their lives sit right in the middle of a system they don't control. 4. The mind shift conclusion. So let's connect everything. At first glance, this looked like a contradiction. Launch an operation, then pause it. Protect movement, then restrict it. Push for peace, while maintaining pressure. None of it seemed to fully align. But now, step back. Here's what's really happening. This isn't about solving a problem directly. It's about shaping the environment in which the solution happens. Because real power isn't just about what you do. It's about what you can do, but choose not to. It's about creating options, and controlling when those options are used. Think about that for a moment. The operation wasn't just a mission. It was a signal. A demonstration. A reminder. And the pause? That wasn't weakness. It was part of the message. So the next time you hear about a global decision that doesn't quite make sense, ask yourself, is it really a contradiction? Or is it a system working exactly the way it was designed to? Because once you start seeing it this way, you stop looking at events as isolated actions. And start seeing them as pieces of a much larger game, and that realization? It doesn't just change how you see this conflict. It changes how you understand power itself. This is Amerixa Daily, where we don't just report the news, we decode it. If this made you think differently, stay with us, because the next story might just change how you see the world again.